Hello and welcome to today's episode of Owning Your Menopause. I am really excited to have this Wonder Woman here with me today and share this conversation with you. She brings wisdom, warmth, and incredible clarity to the midlife journey. She is a career and confidence coach, former GP, and a passionate advocate for helping women rediscover joy, purpose, and confidence in work and in life. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, burnout, or a career crossroad, her work is all about showing us that it's never too late to make a change and thrive. I am so looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. Not only is she brilliant in this space, but she's also become a great friend. So it is my great honour to introduce Dr. Claire Kay.
I'm a little bit overcome with that. Thanks, Matt.
That's all right.
That was really lovely.
Oh, well, I don't know, it is funny, isn't it, when you go on podcasts and you're like, who are they talking about?
I was thinking, she talking about me.
No, don't. Come on, you're the one that's got all that power woman and confidence to share with us. And I have to say, I've met you a number of times, and more recently I saw you talk at Dame Kelly Holmes's Athena Effect day. Event, even, is the word I'm looking for. And you were brilliant. I mean, simply brilliant. I could have listened to you forever. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you.
I want to go
lovely.
back though, and I know that you're always giving advice to people, but I just want everyone to get to know you a little bit. So you were a GP for over 20 years. So can you talk us through what inspired you to transition into this career and confidence coach life, and how that shift has impacted your own sense of purpose?
Yes, I mean, it's a great question because, in fact, somebody asked me this yesterday, and she was like, "Oh, is it not a bit weird that you were a doctor for over 20 years and then you went into being a coach? Like, how does that even fit together?" And I suppose for me, when I was doctoring, I loved being a doctor. I loved everything about it. I loved the academic side, but the bit that I loved most was my patients. And I loved talking to people. And when I was training to be a doctor, my trainer happened to be very involved in something called the narrative approach, which is like this way of talking to people. And it was set up by this guy called John Lorna. And she automatically taught me how to do this. And it's very just about putting people in their stories. So when you go to the doctor and say you've got a cough, rather than just exploring what that cough was, what I would do and what I was taught to do is to understand the implications of that cough for that person. So it might be they might be fearful because maybe someone they know has got lung cancer, or maybe they're worried because they're worried about their breathing at night when they cough, and maybe they have anxiety and it triggers that, or maybe they're worried because somebody they know is poorly and they're worried about giving it to them. So they really putting people in their story was how I trained as a doctor. And then it gradually became, if I'm completely honest, harder and harder for me to be the type of doctor that I wanted to be in the NHS, because it's a really tricky place to be, even though it's very wonderful in lots of ways. And I started to look at, actually, what is it that I love most about my job? And it was the people and their stories. I loved knowing that, when Mrs. X came through the door, I could tell by her walk if she was sad about something or iller, or the way she, almost I'd be like, there's something, isn't there, today? And then they would say whatever it is because I knew them so well. And then a friend of mine, when I was kind of thinking about all of this and kind of in a bit of flux about whether to stay or go, or what my life would look like if I wasn't a doctor, a friend of mine said that she had done something called coaching. And I was like, oh, what's that? That sounds really good. And she told me about it. And I was like, you're literally describing everything I love about my job, but in a different way. But then I was still at that stage where I think a lot of people are when they're trying to change their lives, is like, well, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't know how to approach it. Why would I give anything to that other people who are already in that space don't already give, etc., etc. All those sort of negative self-talk doubts and things. Then I just gradually, over a period of time, started exploring it and thought, this is what I want to do. I went on a course and I was sitting in the course. They said, why are you here? And everyone was like, oh, I just want to learn more about coaching. I want to take it into my job. So there was lots of doctors there like, yeah, I want to use it in what I do. And I said, I'm going to be a coach. And you could see the whole room kind of laughed at me, like internally going, yeah, right. And I was like, no, that's what I'm going to do. And I sat in this course. It took about nearly a year to do. And I was like, this is like my happy place. And at that moment, I stopped being a doctor through coaching, changed everything. Decided to be a career and confidence coach. I love working with women, and it became more and more obvious that that love grew into particularly around midlife. I'm passionate about careers because I've always done a million different things in my career, and I get what it's like to pivot both personally and to do lots of different things and have lots of portfolio aspects in your career. And it just has snowballed, and I built my business, and now I get to do it every day, and I'm
I
very
love
excited
that.
about it.
How old were you when you made that decision? Like, how long have you been doing this bit for?
So I was 42. It's been about, I have to do maths now, been about 7 years that I've been a coach. And interestingly, now when I look back, that was also the time I now know that I was also becoming perimenopausal. And I think that there is a lot of juxtaposition in the changes that I made, but the coaching gave me the confidence that I had to say, actually, I'm ready for this change. I'm ready to pivot. Ready to take the leap with a bit of hand holding.
Yeah, but I think that's amazing because I think, you and I both know we see so many women sort of hitting that struggle point and,
Mhm.
they're either unhappy in their careers or they're not fulfilling enough anymore because they've, can't do what they had set out to do, what they intended to do. They feel stuck, they feel invisible. Where do they begin if I guess they are feeling like is this it? Because it's when I'm noting down and looking down, it's not that I'm like writing a letter and doing something to someone else. Making notes for my brain to remember that I want to ask you questions on what you said because I've written brave, and for me that's such a brave move that you did. 20-year career, doing what you did, and then it's like, okay, this isn't enough, or is this it? If someone's listening to that and that's their question, where do they begin?
So I suppose it isn't, you begin by realizing that it isn't the end, if that makes a sense. It probably doesn't make much sense. What I mean is that I didn't go into this going, I'm brave, I'm going to take the leap, I know where I'm going to go. I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea what it would look like. I felt very alone. Everybody around me was saying, what are you doing? And I didn't say actually, but been offered a massive job. I have a special interest in frailty clinically, and I'd been offered a massive job, like the dream job. And that was the catalyst, is when I got this job, they said, right, Chloe, you're going to take it. And I went, and I was like, oh my God, I either now have to take this or I have to shift. And I just knew I felt so uncomfortable. I felt sick when I thought about this job, even though it was like my perfect job on paper. And that was the push that gave me to say, I don't know what I want. I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I know it's not this. So I suppose the first thing that I would say to anybody who is feeling like they've lost their voice, that they're invisible, that they don't know what their value is or where to start or how to make a change, is to just stop trying to work it out and just look at where you are now. And once you start looking at where you are now, then you can start to think about, well, actually, I really quite like what I'm doing now. I just need a few tweaks. Or, gosh, I don't know what it is I want to do, but it's not this. I feel deeply uncomfortable here. And then there's lots of things that you can then do to start to shape what good might look like. So I suppose, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I suppose the answer is, how do you start? You start by looking at where you are now and really understanding what lights you up, what doesn't, what you would love good to look like. Um, if you didn't have fear, how would you shape things? All these types of thoughts are really great questions that you can start to ask yourself. You don't need a coach to do that, but actually just starting to ask yourself some self-coaching questions that can kind of help you reassess where you are now. And then you can start to think, okay, it doesn't really feel very good where I am now. And then you can start to do the other bits.
What if, because obviously we're assuming here that someone might come to you when they're in their job and they're not feeling fulfilled, they maybe want
Hmm.
a new career. What if they are enjoying their job?
Mm.
So, you speak about, or, let's say menopause being a business issue, not just sort of like a health one. If you're there and you're enjoying it and women are facing these challenges, I guess it's a two-pronged question here. Is like, A, what shifts need to happen in the workplace to support women who are enjoying their jobs, who are questioning themselves? Because I'm assuming that a lot of workplaces might be apprehensive about having someone like yourself, a career and confidence coach, come in case you basically take the whole of their workforce with them. Whereas actually having someone come in, you know, you could just save someone from quitting their job, or you might encourage someone to take a promotion. So I guess, yeah, so that's sort of the one prong question: what shifts need to happen in the workplace? And then that second one, that if someone is feeling like that, how do they advocate for themselves without that fear of being dismissed or overlooked? Or, yeah, you know, how do we have those two conversations?
So you're absolutely right. So we've been like talking about people who don't know what they want or feeling really stuck. And I do talk to a lot of women who are in that space, but I also speak to a lot of women who are really successful, really good at what they do. And on paper, their careers may be flying, but they are either feeling overwhelmed with the incredible choice that they have ahead and don't quite know which choice aligns best with them. Like with you, I mean, you do a million things, and I'm sure a lot of the things that you do are very much aligned to your passions. We can see that in everything that you do. You can see that you really care about what you're doing. So there's that sense of, when there's so much choice out there, how do you pick what's the best sort of path for your career? So optimizing it and streamlining it for the best. And then leading on from that, you've got the group of women who, as you say, are loving what they do. They're in the workplace, but there's kind of like this growth bit that isn't being addressed, this development of self, this sense of, I'm changing as I develop in my career, I'm changing as a person. How does my career change with me? And I see a massive cohort of women in that space who are kind of in their careers like they were 10, 15 years ago, and actually are really missing that word growth. And as soon as we get to that word growth, they go, yes, that's what's missing. Like, where is that excitement in my work? Yes, I'm good at what I do. Yes, on paper it looks great. But what's next, as in like I'm bored of where I am, but what's next for that growth? Where's my learning? Where's my challenge? Where's the excitement in what I do? And I suppose that really leads probably into the second half of your question, is that there's a real need for you as an individual to start to work out what your strengths are, what you're good at, what lights you up, what your values are, what your passions are, and starting to align opportunity towards those. So that's a kind of individual piece of work that, if anyone's interested, I can help to show you how to do that with lots of easy questions. And then the other side of what you're saying is around this advocate bit, because it's great when you know what you want. Say, for example, I don't know, you're in a role and you suddenly think, you know what, I really want to learn to be really good at, I don't know, audit or writing policy or creating a different branch in the business or whatever it is. But perhaps you never even told anybody that that's what you'd love. And there becomes a real frustration around the fact is, why is nobody saying, Claire, why don't you go and run this part of the business? And a lot of the time it's because you as an individual are thinking, I would love to do X, but you've never shared it. And a lot of that comes to this, as you say, advocacy, but it's having the confidence, firstly, to know what you want, which most women do not, and then how to share it. So I would say that the starting point is to work out who you are, what your values are, what you lights you up, what you would like good to look like for you. Once you know that, it's about finding your voice and using it. And so that often comes in the shape of practice. So it might be you practice telling somebody home what it is that you want in the workplace. You might practice in front of the mirror going, I'm Claire and I want to, I don't know, whatever. What am I doing? Oh, I'm running a retreat. I want to run a retreat. I'm doing that next week. Like, I want to do that. And just saying it out loud is a really good starting point. And then you might say, well, actually, I don't feel I can go to my manager at work yet. That feels too scary. But maybe I could talk to somebody at work about it, a friend who kind of knows what I'm good at. And maybe I could say, oh, do you know, I'd love to get into, whatever it is in your business. I'd love to get into that a little bit and see, gauge the reaction. And then you can build further. And they might say, well, who are you going to talk to about that? And you might think, oh, that's a good question. Who am I going to talk to about that? You might think, actually, a really good starting place might be my manager. And if you're starting to then take this part of using your voice, think, well, what would make using my voice easier? For some women, it might be walking into the room is really hard. It might be some women, it's fine. Starting the conversation might be really hard. So think about how you can shape that conversation to make it easier. So I suppose I've just thrown a lot at you, which is really tricky, and there's probably a lot in there. But I suppose the answer to your question is get to know yourself, get to know what your passions are, get to know what your strengths are, get to know what good looks like, align it to who you are, and then think about what would make it easiest to use my voice and who and what help do I need in order to do that.
I love those. I love those answers. And obviously, whilst you've been talking, I've been making notes too. And I just like throw the script in the back because I go off script all the time.
Who needs a script?
Who
Hey,
needs a script? Take it away.
scripts are
I
dull.
know, but it's just my questions because I do need them for my ADHD brain. But something that you said there that I do want to pick up on, which is sort of the growth part and sharing and finding your voice and talking. Now, I work with a lot of women, obviously, and you work with a lot of women. And we're seeing more and more that they are getting to this point where they are finding themselves, they're strong enough to find a voice. We talk about confidence, and let's come to that for a little bit, because I think confidence for so many of us, there's so many different facets to it. You know, like there's a peer, and I am very confident, but put me on the spot and years of self, deprivation, and life at school where I wasn't told I was very good. I'm not confident in that spot. Then, when you said as well, this is another part. So there comes with that. So there comes with just sort of sitting comfortably. You're happy there, but you want your voice and you have got confidence, but you just don't have that next level. When you talk to somebody, okay, and maybe this is for the next question because it's about the growth, the impact at home, because it's all well and good when we talk about the workplace and the impact in the workplace, but as women, we had never been more pushed and pulled in every single direction, right? So it's not just that finding your voice at home as well, and saying, do you know what? This is no longer good enough for me. And it's not to do with me not loving you all deeply. And I say that just in case my family ever decide to listen to one of my podcasts. But I deserve more now. I have fully committed to being, if you have been the main parent to you all. But now is my time. Now that can come with obviously mum guilt. Then just as you're finding your feet, you may get a sick or elderly parent, and your dreams, your desires again take a little bit of a knock. And then the impact just on your relationship, where maybe your husband has been used to, shirts always being hung up in the cupboard or socks or always being in a drawer. I mean, my husband's never been used to that, just for the record. But perhaps, a meal on the table once in a while. And suddenly all that is stripped back because you don't have the time to do all of those things that you were doing for other people, because you're like, this is now my time. There's so much to unpack there. There's so much to it. Like, how do we guide women through that?
Wow. I mean,
sorry. I'm using this as a coaching session. Can you tell?
Oh, I know. Well, I suppose I probably need to sort of strip some of that back to answer some of that, because we could talk about that for like literally a year because there's so much in there. I suppose the first thing to say is when I coach, I don't coach, right, okay, what's your goal? Let's get to your goal. I have no interest in that. And that sounds really weird for a coach. I think about the person as a whole person, and what I do is look at ways of creating lasting change, and we look at patterns that really are serving you really well and look at optimizing those and growing those, and we look at patterns that hold you back and really get in the way. And the reason why that's important is not only does that create lasting change at work, but it creates lasting change in the whole of your life. So if, for example, we're looking at you as a person who finds it really hard to use your voice, maybe in the workplace as the example, by working out what it is that you need in order to use your voice at work, all of those things are transferable into using your voice at home. And it's about really sort of stepping back and saying, actually, I find it really hard I know what I think, but I find it really hard to speak up in any scenario. Some are slightly easier than and some are slightly harder. What is it I need in place in order to be able to speak up more? So if I give you an example, so I was coaching somebody relatively recently, she's a teacher. And when I first met her, she started talking about being in meetings and how when she was in meetings, she just found it really hard to speak. And when she did that, if you're listening to this rather than watching it, she literally took her hand and like put her hand around her throat like this. And actually, it turned out that in all parts of her life with her family, it was all really hard for her to say what she wanted. It was hard for her to advocate what her strengths were. It was hard for her to say what she didn't want to, where she didn't want to live. It was just hard in all aspects of her life. So it started as being a workplace conversation, but actually it was much bigger. And when we worked together, we broke down all the parts of that and thought about the negative self-talk. You know, we all have this voice in our head going, well, you're not getting there for nobody's going to want to hear what you're saying. Or, oh my God, did you remember when last time you said something, they all laughed at you? All those sort of things that we all have. We talked about ways of dialing that down, and there's some brilliant techniques to reduce that negative self-talk. We talked about building confidence. And so that sense of confidence of knowing who you are. So it comes back to knowing what your values are, knowing what your purpose is, knowing what lights you up, knowing what your strengths are. I know I said that before, but actually, once you get to know yourself a little bit more, it's easier to do the harder thing. So if I know that I'm really good at this and I really like that and etc etc, that's really useful because most women in midlife have not got a clue what they want. They are at the bottom of their to-do list. They are, as you say, looking after families, you know, dealing with older people, younger people. They are feeling probably quite unwell, like 75% of women feeling unwell from the symptoms of the menopause. And it's all this perfect storm. So stripping it right back and getting to know yourself again then starts to allow you to then work out not only what your voice is, but how to use it. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I suppose the point I'm trying to get across is that you can't start at the end. You have to start at the beginning. And the beginning bit is just trying to work out who you are and what you want.
How do you bring people with you on that journey who might be
Mhm.
like, that wasn't the person that, you know, this, just for the record, this is not a session, like a session, but I have so many conversations with so many women,
Yeah.
you know, and I said this, and I'm sure you do, where they've made that change, but it doesn't
Mm.
sit. It doesn't sit well. So you can strip all that back and, you know, deal with your negative self-talk, find your voice, and go and do all of that. And then, but the repercussions of that sometimes are huge. And then it's, oh, I'm not going to rock the boat.
Yeah. And you're right, because what happens is that often people are very used to you just rolling over and doing whatever and being at the bottom of the to-do list. And often family, friends can feel, and workplace can feel quite threatened by this new emerged butterfly confident version of you. And actually it does feel really hard to be that version um, in that moment. And I suppose the answer is all around not going at it like a bull in a china shop and taking people with you on the journey and having that sense of vulnerability and being able to say, actually, you know, not it's my time, I'm taking over, it's never too late, but more just, you know, chatting to the kids, chatting to your older relatives, chatting to your partner, chatting to people at work and saying, do you know, I feel like I'm ready to grow. I feel like I'm ready to shape something that feels exciting, and it doesn't necessarily have to be huge. It might be something small, but I feel like I'm ready for the next chapter in our book together. But opening that conversation really early allows people to not give you their judgment, but to give you their support. And it's surprising actually that when you start to share, you know, so I'd love to do something new, or I'd love to shape something, or I'd love to try, I don't know, paddle or whatever it is, trampolining or whatever, some people will be like, really? What? Why? And other people are like, oh, yeah, should we do that together? Or your kids might say, God, that sounds quite fun. Or what does that mean, mum? Or whatever it is. And so I think bringing people on the journey is about not being on a bull in the china shop and having that bravery and that belief in yourself at the early stages of this journey to be able to say, I'm kind of thinking this. And if you get your negative response that you might get, being able to park that and just, but asking people some what questions is really useful as well. And say, I'm surprised by your response. What made you feel like that? Or what did you think was going to happen if I did move forwards with this? Or What do you think the repercussions would be for you? What would you like it to be? Just asking the people around you a bit of what is often really useful. So I suppose it's just going slow
I
is the
like
answer.
that because I think, a lot of this and a lot of that growth chat and trying to grow and trying to make these new changes. Again, I think so many of us get to this point in life where we have lost that voice, we've got that, confidence crisis, and we feel alone. So I guess
Mm.
it's that sort of, can I let these people back in again? And actually, fun enough, I've done a reel which I'm going to share later today. And it was just a moment where I caught myself, and I'm coming onto this because in sort of part of this conversation was confidence, identity, and joy, which is again, I think a lot of people, by the time we've got to midlife and we've dealt with all of these things and we're ready to break through that shell, we might have had a few things thrown our way, and we've lost that sense of joy and connection with people. So it feels really hard to say to people what and why and then bring them into that conversation, because again, sometimes when we've got to this stage, the gap has grown and then the blossoming starts and it feels alien to kind of go, okay, what, why? To that point, my reel is a little bit about joy and,
Mm.
trying to find those moments when perhaps we've lost them. So why do you think we lose that sense of joy? I'm pretty sure it's probably our sort of perimenopause sort of symptoms, but I guess how can we get that back when we feel like we've got this inner power bursting, that we want to do all these things, we've got that negative self-talk, but there's just still something that's just like a bit,
So I suppose before we get to that, I really liked what you were saying, because I think there's this illusion that we have about judgment of others and how they're going to judge us, which I think that judgment piece gets massively in the way of all of this conversation. Like, we presume people will judge us, so therefore we don't do something, and we sometimes are right and sometimes we're wrong. And if we are being judged, we often take that to be very personal, and so therefore stop what we're doing. And I think that judgment piece from both of those angles really impacts the possibility of joy, because we often hold more weight in what we think or we perceive people will think of us, rightly or wrongly, than we hold in the joy. So, as an example of that, when I first started on Instagram, which was about 4 years ago, I honestly didn't know which buttons to press, right? And if you scroll back on my Instagram, it's really bad. And I remember I nearly did not start on Instagram because of all the judgment that I felt internally, that everyone would be talking about me and laughing at me and thinking I was rubbish and what does she know and blah, blah, blah. But also the genuine judgment that I was getting from some people. I saw you on Instagram, that sort of thing.
I know,
And actually, exactly. And actually, that judgment piece was really hard to overcome. But as you start to shift away from either caring what the people that care about you will support you genuinely for most things. That's the reality, and probably are not judging you. The people that don't care about you, who cares what they think?
those
And
that
once you
mind matter, those that matter don't mind, and those that mind don't matter.
Brilliant. You see, I would never remember that, but that is really good. And I suppose that is the massive bit, because when you get to that part of a shift in your mindset and saying, actually, it's going to bring me joy in this case to be on Instagram. That's where I want to build my business. That's where I'm going to connect with my community. I don't actually care about the judgment bit. So once you can get past this judgment bit of joy, once you get past the judgment bit, that helps to bring you the joy. So, and helps you to use your voice. I'll give you another example. So I am the clumsiest person you have ever met. I fall over all the time. I have no coordination. When a ball comes at me, I close my eyes. That's how I roll, right? And I have had this niggle that I've wanted to try and take up paddle for a really long time, but I'm rubbish, right? And every time I've thought about sports, and every time from going all the way back to school, I would be the last one to be picked. That's my brain space. And I've been so worried about what people would think about me on that paddle court that I have not taken up paddle for the last year, because I've been like, oh my God, they think I'm rubbish and I'm going to miss the ball and I'll fall over and everyone will laugh at me and no one wants to play, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I decided to take some of my own advice about 5 weeks ago and to ditch the judgment and to not really care what people think and think, actually, if I fall over, I'm just going to laugh. And I might feel a bit embarrassed later, but actually, is that a life and death situation? No. Really, is my joy more important than their judgment? And probably most of the judgment is made up in my own head anyway. And I'm comparing myself, but probably they probably won't even think about me for more than 10 seconds. And so about 5 weeks ago, I went on my own to my first group lesson and I loved it.
And now
I
you're
was
going to the
rubbish.
now you're going to the
Yes, and now I'm in the England team in 4 weeks. No, I'm playing tomorrow. But do you know what? I am rubbish, but I've managed to ditch the judgment in order to find the joy. And I suppose that's the answer to your question. How do you find the joy? How do you bring people along? You put judgment in its place and recognize that phrase that I can't remember that you said that was really good, and start to then move towards the joy, even if it's tiny little snippets. You might just be reading a magazine brings you joy for 5 minutes. It might be having a cup of tea or being looking at a flower that's in your front garden that you just love. That could be a joy.
It's hard though, isn't it? You and I had these conversations, obviously, over a nice cup of coffee, about that sort of self comparison and social media.
Mm.
And I think, again, that for so many women, especially of our demographic, who, we're really figuring it out, still really haven't got to grips with it. And I'm told every day how unaesthetically pleasing my wall looks. My wall shall always be unaesthetically pleasing because I'm a very reactive person. So when you see the reel of a lamb today, which has nothing to do with fitness and menopause, you will understand the brain. But like you're saying, I think we have to put out what we want to put out, and not worry about that, that the comparison, the judgment, and what people think of us. And I know that has been a really, really long journey myself, because also you put something out there and then you look and then you'll be looking at what other contemporaries might be doing. And it's really, really hard. And I think that for us who have not grown up with that type of, media, we used to have magazines and we could just read them and put them away or burn them or give them to somebody else. I mean, that still caused enough, angst and anxiety, as we know. But that constant scrolling and doom scrolling I think has a massive impact on many of us. And I'm very aware of time, and I want to just borrow some of your skills. So are there any daily or weekly habits that you would recommend to your clients to help them feel more in control of their time, energy and future? What kind of little, can you give us any practical tools?
I'll give you lots of practical tools.
Hey, come on then.
I'm just trying to pick which one in my brain. I'm like, oh, which one should I do? Which one should I do? Okay. I'm going to share with you something that I do in one of my last sessions with my clients. So I usually see them for about 6 months. And one of the last sessions, I'm very much about self-coaching. And I hope that if you're listening, you've heard some what questions that I've been throwing out at you. And those are really great things that you can start to use in your own brain, writing down the answers and sort of moving forwards. So at the end of my coaching series, what I do is what I call, it's a really imaginative name, the monthly check-in. And guess what? It's a monthly check-in. So it's basically a self-coaching tool that I've created that allows you to kind of check out where you're at in your life and then figure out what's going well and what's not going well and what you can do to move forwards. So in essence, it's really simple. It takes 5 minutes, and I suggest to my clients and for you to diarise it on usually a Sunday evening once a month, and you put in your diary, it's a monthly check-in. And on the first thing that you do, we'll do it together now, and then you can kind of figure it out to shape it so it's more personalized to you. But the idea is that the first question you ask yourself is, how am I doing? And it's as simple as that. You don't overthink the answer, and you give yourself an answer out of 10. If 10 is, oh, I'm smashing everything in my life, and 0 is, I feel really rubbish at the moment. So you might say, hey, I don't know if you want to do this with me. Give me a number out of 10 of how you're doing.
6.
Okay, cool. So that would be your overall number. Excuse me. And then you'd write it down. Okay. And then you're going to create a little spreadsheet over the year of your number. And so you're starting at 6. Then what you do is you split your life into different sectors. So I've just picked some arbitrary ones. So you might have family, you might have friendships, you might have finances, you might have work. Some people prefer to call that career. You might have well-being, you might have health, you might have fun, you might have slightly more like smaller things which have a bigger impact. So you might pick something like sleep, but something like trying to categorize the big parts of your life on paper in perhaps, I don't know, 8 or 10 different categories. So I do this with my clients, so it's really personalized to them. So I would suggest that people kind of, if you're going to do this, is kind of think, okay, well, what are the big bits? Is it family or is it relationships? Is it friends or is it socializing? Is it health? Is it well-being? Is it balance? What are the bits that really speak to you? And then it's really simple. All you do is you take each one of those things, those subheadings, and you give it a mark out of 10 for where you are at that precise moment without overthinking it. So you might find that things are going really well with family, the kids are all where they want you to be, mum and dad are
I'm gonna
well.
put a 3 in there today.
Okay, three. Okay, three. Do you want me to ask you these or do you not want to do
No,
this?
I'm happy to. I'm actually
Okay.
fine enough. You've hit I've put down family, sort of social, finance, work, well-being, fun, sleep, and balance. They're all quite relative to me.
Okay, brilliant. So if you're happy to, you don't feel you have to do this because I can just make it up. Do you want to do it?
I don't mind. You know
Okay,
me.
fine. So family, we got a three. I know.
Yeah, I am in the middle of A levels and GCSE.
Okay, social.
4,
Okay, finance.
6. I always love my work. 9,
Great. And what did we have next? Because I've
well-being.
got okay, well-being,
9,
health.
9. I've got. Yeah, let's do sleep. Let's do sleep. Let's not do fun. There's no fun. Let's do sleep. 5. Oh, 5 at the moment. I'm going to go 5.
And you had one last one which
A
I haven't written down.
balance.
Balance, yes. So give me one for that.
3.
Okay. So when you're doing this yourself, you've then got 10 numbers in front of you. You're then going to look at those numbers and you're going to have a think about them. So it might be that the ones that are nines here, you're going, actually, that's really great. I'm happy about that. Fine, leave those alone. Just want to carry on with that trajectory. There might be ones that are quite low, so maybe around the family, but actually you might think, actually, do you know what? It's A-level time, it's a really busy time. Actually, 3 is fine right now. Don't need to change it. 3 is where I'd expect. I'd love it to be a 6 generally, or a 10, or whatever I'd love it to be. But right now it's perfect where it is. So I'm just going to leave it.
Yeah.
You might say, actually, one of these other ones, maybe balance or sleep, perhaps. I'm just picking them out of AM. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's right or not. They actually need a little bit of work and they feel like a priority right now. So then you would say, actually, I'm going to pick one of those to focus on this month. So which one of these numbers are you not happy with that you would love to focus on?
I think balance over sleep.
Okay, so if we were to take balance, you've got it at 3, and then you might say, okay, well, I would love that balance to be, what number would you love it to be in a month's time?
I mean, I'd be happy with a 5.
5. Okay.
But this,
So you're only,
not big expectations on me. I'm perfect.
no, but that you're not looking for
5.
unrealistic change, which is
That's it.
brilliant.
Yeah.
So you want your balance to be from a 3 to a 5. And then what you're going to do is ask yourself some really simple self-coaching questions, which can help to shift that to get it to where you want it to be. So we've now established generally, and this we're talking, but actually when you do it yourself, I promise you it takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And what you then do is you say, right, okay, I'm going to ask myself some what questions to see what I need to do to get from a 3 to a 5. Okay. Have I got time to share some what questions?
Yeah. Go on. Share 3 what questions.
Okay. So you might say, what's the situation? What have I already done? What assumptions am I making? What would a really wise friend advise me to do? And what would be the simplest, easiest first step that I could make to improve the situation?
Yeah.
And I just did 5, sorry.
That's 5 at the 5. That's 5. That's 5.
I normally
That's
do more.
fine.
I normally do
And
more.
I, do you know what I know? Even from you just asking those, especially like what would be the easiest? What would I know where I know where I can create that balance, and by sitting down and I suppose thinking about it, I know then where I can action it rather than just floating with it.
Exactly. So this whole process, I promise you, takes no more than 5 minutes. And at the end of it, there should be one change that's really simple that you can action or start to action the next day that is yours, that's totally in your control.
Say no to more things.
Can I remind you of that?
Yes. Just don't invite me to see you because I don't want to have to say no to that.
Yeah, don't say no to
Don't say
me.
no to that. Say no to things that you don't need to say yes to.
Yeah. Because it's the whole, what is it? If you're not going hell yeah.
Yeah.
then it should be a no.
Then it's no. Okay. I
But
love
then
that.
can I just throw something at you though?
Yes, you can.
When you're really clear of what your values and your purpose are, any opportunity that comes to you, you can kind of go, okay, that's the opportunity. Does it sit with these three top values? Does it sit with my purpose? Yes. Okay, yes, I'll do it. That excites me. No, no, thank you.
I love that nugget to finish on. Thank you. I
Okay.
did have one last question,
Go on.
which you may well have answered with the lady that you spoke about earlier, but you've worked with loads of women.
Hmm.
And what's the one story of transformation that really continues to inspire your work, if there is one?
One. Oh my God, I love my clients so much. That's really hard. Okay. So I would say two recent goosebump moments were when my lady with her hand round her neck, by this end of our coaching together and finding her voice and then being able to use it, she was talking about a really challenging situation that she'd been in. And she talked about how she handled it. And as she did it, she flung her arms open as she was describing how she'd managed this situation and how well it had gone. And she'd done it in just her own personality and her way. And she said, and I used my voice. And it went from this person who was clutching her neck to this person flinging her arms open, being herself, feeling totally empowered, but totally in her own way. She wasn't being anybody else except for herself. And that felt unbelievable. And it was a joy to have watched her do that. And my other recent one was somebody that had a real love-hate relationship with their work and thought there was something wrong with them. And when we really drilled down to what their values were, she established that the reason she had this love-hate relationship with her work is that certain parts of her work really fulfilled every single value she held dear, had the essence of her. But there were other aspects of her work that were so at a juxtaposition to what her value system was that actually it was impossible for her to feel content and satisfied with those parts of her work. And simply by knowing that has allowed her to make a decision, a choice, because we all have choice, even at the darkest of moments, of what to do and how to shape her life and her career. And interestingly, she has chosen to tweak what she's doing, but has fallen back in love with what she's doing because she's able to say, I am upholding my value system more of the time than it's being attacked. And when it is attacked, I recognize that there's nothing wrong with me. It is that my value system is not being upheld in this moment. And she's able to put that sort of separation in there, which has allowed her to fall back in love with she's doing, belief in herself, her confidence has grown, and she's able to shape her future the way she wants it to be. And that to watch is utter joy for me.
Yeah, that's made me smile. I like that because I think that's what it's all about. It's about sitting down and having someone who can, I guess, take you out of the noise that you are in and help you evaluate everything. Claire, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
It's been lovely. It set me up for the day. So thank you, thank you. Claire, where can people find you? Where can they get coaching from you if they want to share all of those things?
So thank you. I'm all over Instagram. So my handle is at Dr. Claire K Coaching. My website is also available for you to have a look at, which is drclairek.com. My whole premise is that I'm really about self-coaching. So there are loads of free tips, tricks, motivation ideas all over my Insta. And I have loads of free resources, which you can get from my newsletter as well. So you can sign up on my website or on Insta as well. And yeah, I'm just really want to try and help as many women as I can to help and work out what they want and how to get it. So please be part of the community. I'd love you to join us.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, you too.